Looks like we need to talk about this news regarding the Army Combat Fitness Test. What's up, my friends, and welcome to an all-new video. I'm U.S. Army veteran ThatChrisChaos, and we need to kind of, I guess, just dive right into this kind of a thing, and let's talk about this latest news with the Army Combat Fitness Test. If you're not familiar with what the hell the Army Combat Fitness Test is, you're probably behind on a lot of things, and I'm not going to try to catch you up to speed, but it's the new version of the Army's fitness test that kind of gets away from the push-up, sit-up, and 2-mile run and adds 6 events instead. So they already had some changes with all the COVID stuff. We already had it where they had this ACFT 2.0 that they kind of introduced because units weren't getting a chance to really be able to, actually, prepare for the Army Combat Fitness Test because they weren't able to go to the gym. They weren't able to get the equipment. So that was kind of delaying things. So they kind of came out with this 2.0 thing to kind of counter that. The 2.0 is what that really did. It was really the same event, but it also added the planking kind of a thing so that if you couldn't do the leg tuck, then you had 2 minutes that you could plank for and that would count. Along with that, they also added that it wouldn't count against you if you couldn't pass because units weren't getting issued the equipment because COVID slowed all that issuing down to where they weren't able to get all the supplies needed to the units they needed to be able to conduct the ACFT, but also be able to practice with it. So that kind of delayed things. But also soldiers weren't able to go to the gyms to kind of work different muscle groups that, you weren't able to kind of work normally during PT. Because a lot of times during PT, you just go for runs a lot and then you'll do some push-ups and whatever. And then you really got to kind of do some stuff on your own sometimes to really work some of the key muscle groups that maybe you need to work for the ACFT. So they had it that way. But it was still a requirement for people in basic training to still need to pass it, and be able to do the ACFT in basic to be able to move on. Well, that's changed now. So now that is no longer the case. I don't think it's a great idea. And I mean, there's people that get paid a lot of money to think about this stuff that maybe has way better logic than I've got. But I feel like you're going to end up with some soldiers that are really out of shape that maybe shouldn't have gotten through the process of basic training that will get through the process of basic training now. And now the units are going to have to deal with them. So I feel like the units are what's going to suffer. The units are going to have to deal with some of these soldiers, maybe not all of them. I'm not saying every single soldier that goes through basic training now is going to be like this, but the units are going to have to deal with some of these soldiers that maybe, needed a lot more discipline, that maybe shouldn't have gotten through the process, and now it's basically their problem. So that's the problem it's going to create because no longer is it going to be required to pass the ACFT, for now anyways, to graduate basic training, to graduate OSUT, to graduate AIT, and get into the Army. So this is a big deal. I feel like it's a big deal. I feel like this is going to cause some issues, right? For some people, it's not a big deal. Maybe they would have had no problem passing the ACFT. I think they're still getting a chance to actually take it, but if they fail it, it's not like being held against them. Which that was the case for just active duty or reserves and National Guard. If they took it and then they failed it, they weren't being held against them until like 2021 or 2022. So they weren't going to necessarily get, counseling or get chaptered out of the Army or whatever. But now adding this extra thing, because you're starting off fresh from coming into the Army. So I understand kind of from the aspect of we want to allow the active duty soldiers, the reserves, National Guard, chance to kind of, get adjusted to it and start working it into their physical fitness routine. But for the brand new soldiers, it doesn't make a lot of sense. They're coming into it fresh anyways. They don't have any experience with doing PT in the mornings other than whatever they're doing, back home before they joined. So there's no real need for them to have a grace period. It's not like they had to go through the transition of switching from the APFT to the ACFT. I don't see what this does and how this helps. A new individual that's joining the Army should be working out, should be getting in shape. Basic training should also help whip them to shape. So that should be the key thing, and they should be, in good enough shape from preparing for basic training as well as in basic training to be able to pass the ACFT to move on into the Army. To now say that it doesn't count and it doesn't matter, that's tricky. I feel like you're going to end up with, some soldiers that are in horrible shape and the units have to deal with it. They're going to end up overweight, possibly. I don't know if they're still enforcing weight standards. I don't think I saw anything about them not enforcing weight standards, but it's still going to kind of cause issues because, what's the incentive, right? You don't have to pass the ACFT, so what's the big deal? So I'm curious to see how it's going to affect. It's definitely going to cause a lot of flack on those individuals. Those people that graduate from basic training are going to get so much crap, right? You already had some individuals, you know, back in the day, and even probably still currently, where they hear this rumor of stress cards, and they're like, oh man, you had to go through basic training with stress cards, or oh, you had to go through basic training with this easy thing that they did, or now even without the shark attack, right? You went through basic training without the shark attack. Now these soldiers are going to have that much extra, you know, beef on them that people are going to give them shit for, you know, oh, you didn't even have to pass the ACFT. So it makes things very complicated. It makes things very tough. So we'll have to see how this really kind of weighs out. Hopefully this doesn't last for too long, but they're talking about 2021, 2022, something like that, where this will be in effect for. Hopefully not for that long. I feel like that's just going to weaken some things, right? There's some people that are already going to be in great shape, so it's not going to cause any difference on them, but there is going to be probably a smaller percentage of soldiers that are slipped through the cracks now because they don't have to pass the ACFT and they can just come into the Army. I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are. Leave some comments down below. I'm sure there's probably a lot of negative thoughts, as there probably should be. So check that out in the comment section, see what people have to say, and leave me some comments down below. Maybe check out some other videos that are on the side over here. Thanks for watching. See you next time. See ya.